In tonight's episode of Almost Above Average, we are grateful to dive into the extraordinary life of Wendy Ella May. From her groundbreaking political career to her deeply personal experiences, Wendy's story is one of resilience, advocacy, and transformation. We'll explore her unique childhood, including a fascinating encounter with Richard Nixon that shaped her worldview. Wendy will share her journey as a young author, her struggles with gender identity, and the profound impact of her father's influence. As we uncover the layers of Wendy's life, we'll hear about her medical challenges, military service, and the advocacy work that followed. Her political aspirations and the significance of her public identity as an LGBTQ candidate will take center stage. Join us for this intimate conversation that touches on family values, community engagement, and personal growth. Wendy Ella May's story is a testament to the power of perseverance and the importance of standing up for marginalized communities. So let's go now to that conversation with Wendy Ella May. All right. Well, let's do it then. What's up, Wendy Ella May? How are you?
I am great. How are you today, Chris?
I'm ready to go. It's going to be a really busy day. I'm excited to do this. I'm glad we finally can record this.
I am so glad we can finally record this.
I apologize for the technical difficulties last time, but
listen, it's no big deal.
I'm learning. So what's going on with Wendy Ella May? I know we were talking about some stuff that I do want to get into, but before we do that, you've had a pretty extensive career as far as writing, political aspirations. You've been running for Congress, right, and Senate?
Listen, I've run from everything from town council to mayor to member of Congress over my career. I tell people I'm a recovering politician.
What does that mean?
Well, it means that I've run and I'm no longer going to run. It means that I'm done playing that thing, and that I understand how it feels for candidates who have been unsuccessful, because that's a stereotype that they think that some people just put their name on the ballot to put their name on the ballot. So that's not. I put my name on the ballot so that I get a place that I can use a soapbox and talk about issues that are so relevant to today society, similar to what I did last week with my ABC BTVD interview.
Yeah.
Talking about relativity. What's relative?
What is relative right now? What communities are you standing up for?
I'm standing up for two communities. The human race, that's everybody.
Me too.
Okay, that's everybody. And then I'm standing up, of course, for the veterans community, which I always stand up for, which includes the LGBTQ community as well. So if I say I stand up for all humankind, it's not sometimes, it's all the time. Everyone is marginalized. Everyone is marginalized. Somewhere in your history, you've been marginalized. It's just what it is.
Right. So where does that come from? Like, how did you grow up? What was your pathway like? Where did you come from, Wendy?
Well, I came from my mom and my dad. I was taught values by my mom and my dad and my grandparents. Simple values. Value family, value God, value your commitment to things. So from a very young age, I have always valued the ability to speak my mind. You know, there used to be a saying that children should be seen and not heard.
Yep, my wife repeats that sentiment a lot about her childhood, not for our kids.
Right, and during my childhood, from birth to age 5, was very different than 5 and above.
Why is that?
Well, because my dad got sick when I was 5 years old. He had his first heart attack, and it kind of changed the dynamics of the household.
Right. What did he get sick with?
My father was a cardiac patient. My father multiple heart attacks from the time I was 5 until he died when I was 9.
Right.
So for 4 years, I kind of had to live more like...
Those are really formative years.
They are.
You lose your father... I can't imagine that. Like, I know what my kids went through at that age. That's when they're soaking up all the stuff that mom and dad are giving them, you know?
Correct. And now, you know, they put another burden on me as the youngest in the family, because my siblings were all grown. It made a difference.
Yeah.
And it made a difference to my commitment to my community as well.
Right.
Now you might ask what that means.
Well, did that send you on a trajectory? Because I can imagine losing. That's a huge traumatic moment. That kind of changes the course of your entire life, right? What do you think about that experience guided your direction where you are today?
I think because I experienced loss, I understood the value of life very differently than, say, someone who Chris has never ever experienced loss. I mean, I lost in a 1 year period. in 1970 through 1971. I lost my great-grandmother. 6 months later, I lost my dad. And 6 months later, I lost my grandfather.
That was like bang, bang, bang.
Bang, bang, bang. I think we spent more time at the funeral home than we spent anywhere else. So as a kid, having a responsibility of learning CPR, I learned that at 5, having to be in the same bedroom as my dad because my mom was petrified.
Yeah.
And to grow up.
Probably a really somber mood in the house too. You got brothers and sisters, and you got I imagine your mom's depressed, right?
My mom was losing the love of her life and didn't know what she could do to stop it.
Right.
My mom and my dad were sweethearts. I'll tell a story real fast. My dad got my mom pregnant with my oldest brother before they got married. So my mom never told me her birth, she never told me when they got married.
They never told you?
They never told me. I did not know their wedding anniversary.
Why? Why is that?
I came from a Methodist, Episcopal, Orthodox family.
I don't know what that means, but it sounds like a whole lot of things.
The Methodist Church, 1960, was the Methodist Episcopal Church. Today's United Methodist Church. And then the Orthodox side of it was very strict following rules.
It's like Old Testament, right? Like Jewish?
No, it's New Testament.
It is?
And Old Testament, but we do certain things ritually wise that the Methodist Episcopal Church didn't celebrate.
Okay. It's still Christian denomination?
Still a Christian denomination. It goes back to the 1700s in America. So my mom got pregnant and got married in August and had my brother Harry in September. So my mom kept that from me. I never knew this until after she passed away. You might hear some sirens going by. I think my mom's values set me in a path, a moral compass path. Because I was so young when my dad died, I knew very little about his family. I knew very little about his life. And when my dad got sick, I kind of had something strange happen. In the scope of it, my dad was preparing our family for his death.
When he got sick?
When he got sick. So we would go out every week with a group of other families, Catholic, Protestant, Jewish, white, and black.
This is in New Jersey, right?
This is in New Jersey. And we would have dinner at this diner every week. When my dad got sick and couldn't afford it, he would do everything he could do, even going out collecting soda cans, so that we could go out to dinner once a week.
Aww.
But in that group of men, the fathers and the husbands, I ended up having mentors.
Okay.
So, to be exact,
kind of like uncles, I guess?
Yeah, like unofficial uncles.
Right.
So my best friend today, to be exact, 2 of my best friends today, come from that time and era when families got together with other families. You build a moral compass. You build a community. So a good example. I know exactly where I was the night Martin Luther King was killed. We were at the diner. George, the guy that owned the diner, I think his name was George. He had a little TV set, one of those little black and white TV sets behind the register.
Yeah.
Walter Cronkite interrupted the show that was
normally scheduled programming.
My phone on Do Not Bother, and it rang anyway. I'm going to fix that too, because I don't want to hear it. So hang on for a second. Come on. Okay, if I start playing with it too much, it's just going to go crazy. Okay, so anyway, we're at the diner. There's 7 or 8 families, and the guy announces over the radio, over the television, that Martin Luther King was killed, assassinated. My dad and another gentleman, Mr. Kreisberg, and Mr. Levy, all got up from their table, walked over to the counter and said, "We need our food to go. We need to leave right now." So my dad loaded up his Jeep Wagoneer and led the other 2 families down the road out of the danger zone. It built character.
Where did he get shot at?
Well, he was shot in another state, but the black community in the city of Asbury Park was already at an unrest.
Oh, I didn't even think of that. Yeah.
So within minutes after Martin Luther King was assassinated, the black community came together to riot. We made it home safely. And I remember sitting on the couch in this little house I lived in, 2-story 4-bedroom house. My dad sitting down at his favorite chair. He had a recliner, a lazy boy recliner. He was sitting there, my brother John and I were sitting on the couch. And my father told me about racism that I never knew. He told the story about when he was in the military, how Native Americans and blacks were not allowed to vote, and how he had the opportunity to, with some other soldiers, send a letter to the Department of the Army. Mm-hmm. Never knew this. But it set me on a moral compass way. And then not too far from there, I had met Richard Nixon at a campaign rally.
Tricky Dick? Tricky
He
Dicky?
was let me say something, most people will not agree with me, but he was one of the best presidents that America has ever had.
Yeah. And my perspective, so growing up, I now that I'm older, like I can realize that my thinking is flawed, but there's a perception that, when I was growing up all throughout school and in the media landscape, to paint Richard Nixon as a thief and a crook and
thief, a liar, a crook.
But like a lot of people like you, I've heard a couple people that are in my life, like members of my family, are like, no, dude, Richard Nixon, he was a great man. Like, what?
Well, not just that. I'll expand it. I spent a day with Richard Nixon.
You spent a day with him?
Whole day.
How was that?
Well, my grandmother was in charge of she was a member of the Republican Women's Group in the community next door to where Richard Nixon was visiting. And my grandmother was in charge of having sandwich signs made to walk up and down this great thing called the Ocean Pathway. Mm-hmm. And I got hired for $10.
Yeah, you did.
To walk up there, and I got my grandmother to hire a lot of my friends. But I made my sign, and I made a sign that said N-I-X-N.
What does that mean?
I left the O out.
N-I-X, Nixon. I got you.
Yeah. So I had left the O out intentionally.
Okay. Nixon.
And my grandmother was yelling at me. She was like, "Don't you know how to spell?" I said, "Yes, I do. I know how to spell very well." Mm-hmm. I was a very intelligent child. I think I was in 2nd grade. Walked up and down. He arrives in a helicopter. Mm-hmm. And he had a famous wave that he did when he got off the helicopter. So as he got off the helicopter...
Was it like that? The little stiff one?
Yeah, similar. But I remember he got off the helicopter and looked straight at my sign. And then called the Secret Service agent to get me to bring me over to meet him. And he asked me what was wrong with my sign. And I said, "Nothing, sir." He said, "Well, are you good at spelling?" I said, "Yeah, which name would you like me to do? Richard, Milhouse, or Nixon?" He said, "Well, what's that sign say?" I said, "It says N-I-X-N. I left the O out intentionally because if it just said Nixon, I would just be one of 13 kids walking around. You'd pay no attention."
Mm-hmm. Boom. Clever marketing.
Well, great marketing.
I do shit like that all the time.
Got me in the limelight. So I said to my grandmother, at that time I was a boy, "Can your grandson spend a day with me? And I'll give you $100.
Okay.
So my grandmother said, "Absolutely. That would be an honor and a privilege." So that day started at the great auditorium. I sat in the front row. And Chris, I'll never forget this day. And I don't believe in coincidence.
Me neither.
I believe that Jesus, our Lord and Savior, puts certain people in our lives for certain reasons.
Amen.
Including how we met.
Right. We'll tell that story in a minute.
Richard Nixon, he gets in the helicopter after his speech, and we fly in a helicopter over to this place called Monmouth Shopping Center.
La-di-da.
Yeah, la-di-da. Don't trust me. It was the first time I was in a helicopter and the last time I wanted to be in a helicopter. Anyway, we ended at this place called Monmouth Shopping Center, an open-air shopping center, which was turned into a mall. Another whole story. But anyway, we end up in the Bamberger's store, which is like a Macy's. And on the top floor, they had a luncheonette, a little cafeteria. So Richard Nixon was really a strange man when it came to what he ate.
Really? Do tell.
Yeah. He just had some really bad, really unusual habits.
Kind of like Donald Trump just eats McDonald's and KFC all the time? Something like that?
No, it was like the condiments that Richard Nixon liked.
Okay.
So he liked ketchup.
Big fan. Love it.
Yeah, but not in my cream cheese or cottage cheese or any other type.
I used to put ketchup in my mashed potatoes.
Okay. So,
big fan.
Yeah. So anyway, he goes up, he gets a chicken salad sandwich with extra mayonnaise and ketchup. Now, So the lady behind the counter, her name was Ella May Stevenson.
Okay.
And Ella May Stevenson was very proud that she had made the chicken salad. For then, he was not even president yet. He was a candidate for president.
And she was super jacked that she made a sandwich for gonna be president.
Soon to be president.
Aw, that's cute.
Okay. The only problem was he choked on a bone.
He did?
In that sandwich.
The president or the
Richard Nixon
ate a sandwich and choked on a bone?
Yes.
Did she get thrown in prison?
Understand this. You have to play in this head for a minute. I already knew CPR. I already knew how to get choking victims unstuck.
Mm-hmm.
And I was 7. I was not.
Am I about to hear the story how Wendy Ella May saved the life of Richard Nixon?
Well, I don't have to tell the story now, do I?
No, I want to hear it. Let's go.
So there's all of these people. I mean, there's tons. There's Secret Service agents. There's a doctor. There is Congress members. The press. Everybody there.
Yeah.
And he's turning blue. And they're not doing anything.
They're just panicking like, hey.
Nobody's doing anything, Chris. They're just standing there looking like a bunch of idiots.
Right.
I go behind him. I smack him on the back. Out comes the chicken bone. I made a friend for life.
Yeah, right.
Okay. So I spent the rest of the day with him, went to Pennsylvania, came back home. We landed the helicopter across the street from my grandmother's house. I said goodbye. Thought that was the end of it.
Mm-hmm.
A couple days later, my grandmother lived in the front house and I lived in the back house. A couple days later, my grandmother calls me and tells me there's a phone call. So I went next door, grabbed the kitchen phone, and it was his secretary.
Really?
And she wanted to know if I thought it was comfortable enough to share the phone number with him so he could keep in touch.
How awesome is that?
It was pretty awesome. So, you talk about my writing and my artistic things.
Yeah.
Now I'll show you how the connection starts. The first book I ever wrote was A Year in the Life of the Candidate.
A Year in the Life of the Candidate?
Yeah. And
okay,
it was
is that on Amazon?
No, you can't even find it.
Okay.
My publisher wanted me to find it to redo it, but I wrote it as an 8-year-old.
From the perspective of an 8-year-old?
From the perspective of an 8-year-old spending a year on the campaign trail with a presidential candidate.
Okay.
It was really interesting because I had a friend of mine whose dad was a publisher in New York, who I shared the manuscript with, who published the book and printed 400 copies. I sold 398 copies, autographed, by Richard Nixon, okay? And I kept one and I gave one to him. Unfortunately, later on in life, my grandmother's house caught fire. And we put the fire out right away. But everything that was in the basement was flooded.
Do you think he still has his? Is he alive?
No, he's dead. He passed away in 1994.
Sorry, guys.
So here's the story. My dad was sick. Remember, that's how I started this conversation. So my dad dies New Year's Day, 1971, 9 years old. Winter break from school, 4 foot of snow. My father had a cerebral hemorrhage. Before he hit the floor, he was dead. Woolley Funeral Home in Long Branch was our family funeral home. But because it was snowing and because it was so bad, we couldn't have the funeral for a couple days. Plus, we had to wait for his brother, my Uncle Orville, and his sister, Aunt Violet, to come to Newark Airport because of the weather. It was difficult. So we are all getting together. My Uncle Orville looked just like my dad. Literally could have passed for a twin. Long story short, in those days, probably still today, people would have a viewing from 2 to 4 and then 7 to 9. Okay? And in between, the Italian families and the German families tend to go out to eat as a family. So we're out to eat at our cousin's restaurant, and the phone rings. There was no cell phones back in those days, Chris. People actually used landlines.
Yeah.
And a dial phone.
I remember those.
So it was the funeral home calling for my mom to tell her that she needed to come back right away to the funeral home because there was a group of people there that my mother had to come and visit with, and they didn't want to be there from 7 to 9. So we arrive.
Secret Service, wasn't it?
My 4th grade teacher is in the parking lot. I think she had an MG car.
Okay.
So we come back in. There's 2 stretch limos in the driveway. My mom is totally freaking because she just has no idea. And we walk into the funeral home, and there Richard Nixon is paying respect to my dad.
How cool is that?
Well, here's the better part. he wasn't alone.
Who do you have?
So he had 2 U.S. Congress members, a U.S. senator, and he was there with I don't know how many Secret Service men. Bruce Woolley Sr., who was at that time owner of the funeral home, asked my mother why my dad was so important that the President of the United States would come. And my mom
said,
this
guy? Is he like the leader of the CIA? Is he Black Ops?
Yeah. So my mom said, I don't know, but he's here. So Mr. Woolley walked over to Mr. Nixon, President Nixon at the time, and asked him, well, did you know Mr. May? Did you know Marion May? And he goes, no, not really. But I'm friends with his son.
Aww.
So it's weird.
So no matter what Richard Nixon did, he could have killed 35 people. You're going to love him anyway.
You know what? He became a mentor to me. And
that's a very sweet thing to do.
When you get to my office again, I'll show you a photo signed by Richard Nixon that says my name, my boy name, Wayne.
Yeah. What was your boy name?
Wayne, W-A-Y-N-E.
Wayne?
Yes.
Okay. I never knew that.
Yes. Underneath Wayne's the word impossible.
Okay.
I am possible. It taught me, because I had a guidance counselor, Mr. Minnie, who refused to allow me to leave 2 years early from high school.
Why?
Because I was from a sending district and I was worth $10,000 to the school district. So long story short, getting back to Richard Nixon, President Nixon died in 1994. He was living in New York City, and pretty much every week I would talk to him. And that's why I became morally compassed as a candidate.
Yeah.
I was going
to ask you, so at 9 years old, if you're seeing Richard Nixon at your dad's funeral, that's got to put something in your head, like put a bug in your brain, like maybe politics is something I'll pursue. Was your dad a politician?
No, my dad was not. To be exact, my dad was an honorably discharged Korean and Second World War veteran.
Okay.
But my dad was a Boy Scout leader, mended fences, built men.
He was a great American man.
Yeah, he was raised as an orphanage in the Soldiers and Sailors Home in Indiana. There were so many things about my dad that I didn't know until I was a grown-up. Why my father was respected by the men in his Boy Scout troop.
Right.
Why he was called a leader of men. Till I was probably 35 years old before I found out what my father had done.
So you get to learn the legend of your dad, and then at 35 you find out something else?
Yeah, I find out a lot of things.
What was it?
First of all, I found out that my father did discriminate. My father he was a member of the Veterans of Foreign Wars 1333 in Asbury Park, New Jersey.
Okay.
And they had a Boy Scout troop, and they had taken all the kids, all the misfits. You know, the Great American Misfits, the black kids, the Jewish kids, the kids that nobody wanted, the kids that were rough and tough and bullies. My father had them in the Boy Scout troop.
He had what?
They were all in his Boy Scout troop.
Okay, nice.
So here's
the Bad News Bears kind of?
Yeah, the Bad News Bears. Yeah. That was my dad's Boy Scout troop.
That's awesome.
Guess what? Out of I think there was 10 or 11 men, my dad was actually going to pick up the Boy Scouts the day I was born. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't there by my mom. He was on the road. They had to call the state troopers from New York to find my dad, to tell him that my mom was ill.
Yeah, you're about to have a baby.
Another baby.
Yeah.
So I knew my dad's Boy Scout troops in a different fashion as a Boy Scout myself. And one of the Boy Scouts, his name is Raymond Chabelle. Nice kid. Ray Chabelle became a judge. Carl Williams, first black mayor of the city of Asbury Park, New Jersey. Mr. Fashion. These were my father's Boy Scouts. And they all turned out to be honorable men.
Good people.
Of distinguishing character.
Nice.
And I found out from Ray Chabelle that my dad was the influence.
Your dad ran in some elite circles, it sounded like.
Actually, my dad was, to me and to many other people, a real American hero.
That's awesome.
My dad would play Santa Claus at Christmas at Fort Monmouth.
Aww.
My dad was a member of the DAV, a member of the American Legion, a member of the VFW. My dad put in a moral compass. And one of the reasons I went into the military was I am a ninth generation now, veteran.
Thank you for your service.
Our service in the United States military goes back to the American Revolution.
Right. Your families?
My family's.
Oh, man.
Yeah. And
That's awesome.
It goes back in England and in Germany. I mean, it's amazing just what I found out. But that was just until I was 10 years old. And then I was bullied in school. I've been different all my life.
Were you used to be a boy, you were born a boy? Right?
Well, I was not born a boy. I was born a neutral.
You're going to have to explain that to me like I'm an idiot, right?
No, it's not. So today, gender, according to the orangutan in Washington, is boy and girl, male and female. Well, that's not true because there is spectrums of manhood, there's spectrums of femalehood, and there's an in-between. So someone that is, like I am, a vanishing twin.
A what?
A vanishing twin.
Oh, that's
Meaning
right.
When my mom was carrying me, there was two of us, and one merged
You
into
mean you
the
ate
other.
your sister?
Huh?
You mean you ate your sister?
Well, I might have ate my brother.
Or brother?
I don't know.
Either way.
Either way.
Assert dominance from the wound. From the womb.
From the womb. So anyway, when I was born, August 19th, 1961, I was born at a hospital called Ficken Hospital in Neptune, New Jersey. And I was delivered by Dr. Louis E. DeSimone of Asbury Park. He couldn't figure out if I was a boy or a girl because my thing was so small and you couldn't tell. Back in those days, they could put neutral, meaning they couldn't decide.
There was an option for that back in those days?
Back in those days, yes.
Okay, fair enough.
And here's the funny thing that today in New Jersey, they have 3 genders.
Is trans one of them?
No. Male, female, or neutral. It's just simple.
I kind of like that breakdown.
So anyway, I grew up, first 4 years of my life, I had a birth certificate that said neutral.
Okay.
When I was 5, getting ready to go to kindergarten, I had to go for physical to get in kindergarten. And they had just passed a law stating that you had to decide male or female. So my doctor said to my mother, well, I don't know what to do.
What's it going to be?
What's it going to be? So my mother said, well, he has a little thing down there.
At
so
5 years old?
Yeah, it was a little thing. Just
okay.
A tiny little thing.
Yeah.
We'll make him a male. So I became a male. Changed my birth certificate to M. So now I'm going to jump ahead here for you, Chris, because it's necessary for time. I am now 10 years old.
10-year-old boy.
10-year-old boy. Lost my dad. And I'm starting to have these issues of pain and bleeding every month. About the same time every month. So my mom, I pass out in school.
From bleeding?
From bleeding.
Oh my God.
They took me to the nurse's office. Her name was Mrs. Sainer. And Mrs. Sainer sends me home. I lived across the street from the school, literally. Next month, same time, I'm in gym. And whoops, I pass out again. This time, she calls my mom and calls the ambulance. And they take me to the accident room, which is today known as the emergency department. By the time I get to the hospital, I'm normal, as normal as I could be. So the doctor in the emergency room, because it was a Wednesday, was Dr. DeSimone, our family doctor. And he said to my mom, what happened? My mom said, I don't know. They called from the school, said that, Wayne passed out again. And this time they were calling the ambulance. So that's why we're here. Now, I'd already had a relationship with the rescue squad because for 4 years, my dad would have heart attacks. Mm-hmm. And the rescue squad would come and take him to the emergency department, the accident room. Sometimes my dad would get home before the ambulance got home because he was stubborn. He'd sign himself out of the hospital.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Dr. DeSimone says to my mom, bring him to the office next. So the following Thursday, I go and, he asked what happened. I said, I don't know. I kept passing out. So for almost 2.5 years.
Every 30 days,
Every 30 days, I've seen every doctor imaginable. Psychiatrist.
So you're actively bleeding every 30 days?
About every 30 days.
Okay.
About 28 days, actually. Okay? So I'm seeing every kind of doctor.
Weird question. Are you bleeding out of your penis?
I'm bleeding out of my front and my back.
Okay. Sorry.
For 2.5 years, I saw every kind of doctor known to man. Even a witch doctor, I tell people.
Okay.
So I had went to all these doctors. And finally, Dr. DeSimone said, this is beyond the scope of any of the doctors here. So we wouldn't like you to go to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia.
Did they have any hints about what was going on? Did they have any idea?
I remember one doctor. He was a gastro doctor, older Jewish man. And he said to my mother, I think it's nerves. I think it's psychological. So the doctor, the gastro doctor, takes me to the hospital shrink.
Okay.
Who then, for like 6 months gives me all these stupid questions to see if I'm mentally unstable.
If you're mentally causing your genitals to bleed every 30 days.
Correct.
You know what separates the champions from the rest? It's not just about the will to win, it's about the will to prepare. I'm not just doing pull-ups, I'm pushing limits. Every rep is a reminder that I'm capable of more than I thought possible. That's why I chose Bucked Up. Their supplements give me the edge I need to take my workouts to the next level. From pre-workouts to recovery, they've got everything I need to stay on top of my game. With Bucked Up, I get the energy, focus, and endurance to crush every session. Whether you're a pro or just starting out, their products will help you achieve your fitness goals faster. Ready to unlock your full potential? Visit buckedup.com and use code McMedia1 at checkout for exclusive savings available only to my followers.
Got it.
My mother's best friend, because my mom didn't drive, my mom's best friend arranges for us to go to Philadelphia, to the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. It's May 1975.
Dang.
I know what day it was. The night before, my mom got really mad at me because I kept her awake all night long. I was tripled over, not doubled over, tripled over in pain.
Oof.
And my mom just didn't know what to do. So that next morning we had a 9 o'clock appointment at Children's Hospital with the clinic for pain management.
Mm-hmm.
We got there. My mom was so tired she asked me to go get the paperwork to fill out. This time in my life, I'm on Social Security, Medicaid, and welfare because we lost my dad, and VA benefits. So I go up to get the paperwork, and I turn around to go take it to my mom, and I pass out.
Ugh.
Cold as I wake up in the emergency department of the Children's Hospital of Philadelphia, and I'm naked, and it was cold. So this doctor comes in and says to my mother, "What's wrong with your daughter?" Indian doctor.
Okay.
Dr. Patel.
From India?
From India, resident, Dr. Patel. And he says to my mom, "What's wrong with your daughter?" And my mom says, "Nothing. She's home with her husband and her baby." So the doctor asked again. And then the doctor realized my mother didn't consider me a girl.
You were a boy to her.
I was a boy.
Did you have breasts?
I did. And my hair was kind of like what I have today, but just a little bit neck shorter. So the doctor says to my mother, "What's wrong with your child?" And my mother says, "He keeps passing out every month. And somebody has to find out what's wrong." And raises her voice. My mom didn't like black people, Indian. She didn't like anyone that was any other thing than absolute white.
Ooh, that's tough.
Very tough. So we're talking about 1975. So the doctor says, "Oh, no problem. I can figure it out. I know exactly what's wrong."
She's a girl.
No. So the doctor says to my mother, "There's this new device and I want to get it and get the nurse to bring it in here. And then I'll show you what's wrong. Do you know anything about anatomy?" My mom says, "Yeah, I was a beautician. So I had to take anatomy." That's my class. So anyway, Dr. Patel comes in and he has this big device. The television was unbelievable. The thing looked like a scuba diver's mask hooked on this hose, and he starts, and it's cold as shit. Chris, I'm telling you, this thing that he's probing me with, I think was made by the Martians because it was freaking cold.
Yeah.
So he starts up here at the carotid, comes down, shows my mom that my carotid's killer. Because now, later on, I understood this better. My mom thought I was going to die. And she had already lost her dad, her husband, her grandmother. She was petrified. So he comes down and he shows her my lungs and shows her my kidneys, comes back up, shows her my carotid, my lung, and he gets right below my breast there. And he stops. And he says, "Mrs. May, what I'm about to show you is going to get you upset." She said, "Well, nothing can get me upset. I want to know what's going on with my child. My son keeps passing out." So he shows her. My mom goes, "That doesn't belong there."
What, your breasts?
No, below my breast. Above my kidney, off to the side, directly underneath where my gallbladder is.
Just the cervix or the...
Just up from my pelvis.
Yeah.
Is a fully functioning, egg-producing female organ.
Inside, so they couldn't see it? Is that kind of the thing?
Inside.
Copy that. Okay, that makes sense.
So now I'm having a period.
Right.
That's why I pass out.
Yeah, that makes sense.
My mother grabs me. I'm freaking naked. Okay,
yeah.
My mother throws clothes on me, drags me out of the hospital, into the car, and back to New Jersey.
You're real
She
upset,
wouldn't
huh?
listen to anything the doctor said. Well, about 3 weeks later, Dr. DeSimone, he gets the results of my visit to Children's Hospital. And he knows exactly what's going to happen. My mom's going to have to decide what to do.
What she wants you to be?
He knows my mom real well. He's delivered all of her children.
Yeah.
You know.
But now she's got to choose what sex to have you as?
Never had that happen.
Yeah.
Because he knew she wasn't going to do it.
Did that cause like a rift between you and your mom? Because of how like she believed, like she didn't like black people? Was there a religious aspect to that too?
No. It was just my mother.
Okay.
My mother was born in June 27th, 6.
Yeah.
And it was just how my mom was brought up. It
right.
was, nothing racist. It was just white people were superior people to all of these other
people. And they never learned better.
Right. And my mother did learn better.
Yeah.
I'm very proud to say, Chris, that my mom
came around later.
Yeah, soon learned.
Yeah. Hey.
So anyway, long story short, Dr. DeSimone says to my mother, listen, my wife wants to talk to you. So he goes, gets his wife, and Dr. DeSimone's wife and my mom go into the house. The office was connected to the house. And he sits down and he says, listen, I always thought there was something different about you. This is the actual word-for-word conversation. That's how much it's implanted in my head. He said, when your mother came in here when you were conceived, about a month later, I was having your mom come in because you were the fourth child. And she had problems with her last child, meaning my brother, 9 years ago. So I kept a very close watch. My mom's blood pressure went up, her sugar went up, all kind of complications. So he said, I thought I heard 2 heartbeats. 1961. No technology like we have today.
Right.
Okay. So now, it was interesting. So he said, I know what we're going to do. We're going to give you a shot. It's going to fix all the problems, and you're going to be perfectly fine. You're going to come once a week, and you're going to get a thing called testosterone.
The hormones?
A hormone shot. But we're going to tell your mother it's a vitamin shot because your mother will not accept anything else.
That's crazy. You couldn't do that shit today.
No. So from the time I was 14 till I was 18 when I went in the military, 17 when I went in the military, I was on testosterone once a week.
Testosterone?
Testosterone.
So you went the other way.
So what he was doing was he was giving me male hormones.
He was trying to make you a man.
No, he was trying to get male hormones to make my female hormones.
Trying to outpower them?
Outpower them. So what happened is, and here's the scary thing, they didn't really know much about testosterone and estrogen back in those days. So he was giving me a dosage of testosterone that was poisoning me. So the average male testosterone level is about 100. When I went in the military, I took a physical, including blood work. My testosterone level was 300.
Jesus.
So the first question out of the doctor, because I was going into reserves, the first question out of the doctor's mouth was, do I use steroids? I said, no. He said, well, this doesn't restrict you from being in the military, but I'm really concerned. How are you getting these testosterone so high? So I tell him, that, I go every week to get a testosterone shot. And he immediately says, stop. And I did. Went in the reserves, went regular Army. And during the time I was in the regular Army, I got hurt.
So from 14 to 18, before you got into the Army, were you still presenting as a male?
Yes.
Okay.
I was presenting as a male for a very long time, of course. Always knowing that I had another... Well, since I knew this, I always knew I was different. I always knew that I always knew that there was a potential for problems with my hormonal system.
Right.
So I went in the Army, went to basic training again, got hurt at basic training, hurt my neck, my back, my right knee, got an infection that went up my right leg, across my groin to my left hip.
Ugh.
So I'm on sick call. Why I'm on sick call, I can't do everything I'm supposed to do.
What is that?
That's when the doctor says medically
you can't do what you're supposed to do.
You can't do PT, you can't do this, you can't do that. So I had a wise mouth. I'm going to be the first to admit it. I had a testosterone level that made me kind of arrogant and male.
Okay. There's a little male ego going on?
a lot of male ego.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I said something to one of the drill sergeants that was like some bullshit, and I got fire watch, which basically meant I stayed up all night cleaning the toilet and making sure there was no fires. Went down the stairs to get a new broom and a new mop. And when I went into the what they call duty officer's hut, I was jumped from behind, blindfolded, thrown in the shower, and sodomized by 3 or 4 drill sergeants.
Drill sergeants? In the
They
Army?
basically raped me in the Army. They raped me, and when they released me, I ran back upstairs crying.
Mm-hmm.
And I had a breakdown.
I'm really sorry that happened to you.
That's fine. Don't be sorry. Be sad. You had nothing to do with it. There's a difference.
That's tough, though.
So then the next day, I come down the stairs and I request to go to sick call. So I go to sick call. And the doctor said, "What's the matter?" I said, "I got raped last night." He said, "You have any
It couldn't
proof?"
have been easy saying that to somebody else.
No, especially to a male doctor. And he said, "Do you have any proof?" And I said, "Not really." He said, "Well, I'm going to send you to the psychiatric clinic because I think you need to talk to a psychiatrist." So I go, and the psychiatrist says to me, "This happens a lot." I said, "Okay." He said, "Did they come in you?" And I said, "Well, I don't know. I think they did." He said, "Do you have the underwear you were wearing?" I said, "I do. Be exact, I'm wearing it." He said, "I want you to take that underwear right now. I'm going to get you an envelope. I want you to take it, I want you to put it in the envelope, and I want you to send it to someone you can trust." So when I was 13 years old, I had worked for a Congress member, Congressman Jim Howard, the fisherman's friend, because he protected the ocean, he protected the fishing rights. He was a Democrat, I was a Republican family, and I sent it to him, to his office.
Did you put a letter in there, I hope?
I explained exactly what happened and went back to my unit where I was still on sick call. I still was on light duty. And the next thing I know, about a day later, Chris, I wake up in the hospital. See, I got a staphylococcal bone infection.
Oh, you got a staph infection?
Got a staph infection in my bones.
From the rape?
No. Remember I told you I originally got hurt? I hurt my knee, my back, and my neck, and my hip?
Yeah.
Well, I had fallen and was refused medical care.
You refused it?
No, I was refused. They would not let me.
Well, they refused to give you care. Oh, my God.
Yeah.
The military?
No, just my drill sergeants. They refused to allow me to go to medical call.
Because they did what they did?
No, this was first, the knee and the neck happened.
Oh, gotcha.
Then when I got treated, finally able to go, that's when I got raped. So anyway, long story short, Chris, I'm in the hospital like 3 or 4 days. I'm in really bad shape. I've got an infection that goes out my hip about that far. And I proceed one night at about 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm sweaty. I'm not sure if I'm hallucinating or what, but someone comes into my room and has me sign a piece of paper. 2 days later, I have a chaplain comes in and he says, "You're going home." So what? I don't want to go home. I want to make a career of this. So you've been honorably discharged. Going back to your reserve unit. Have fun. Have a nice day. You're going to the transport company tomorrow, and you're going home.
So they kind of tricked you and kicked you out kind of thing?
Well, they didn't kick me out. They just wanted to hush-hush as much as they could.
Yeah.
What happened, because they know that
your liability sitting in that.
Yeah, and it was criminal. Both of these. So the two things together are criminal.
Yeah, that's corrupt of our government, or of those drill sergeants, right?
Let me just say this, Chris. The amount of sexual assaults that occur in the United States military is horrible.
That's a shame.
It's embarrassing. And here's the thing that a lot of people don't understand. It has nothing to do with your gender. Nothing.
Yeah.
Rape has nothing to do, sexual assault have nothing to do with if you're a male or a female, or you're presenting as something that my friends used to say to me all the time, especially when I went back into I was home. I was a failure, Chris. I was a failure. That's how I felt. I had no self-esteem. I hated myself. I was suicidal. No one was listening to me. They sent me home with a staphylococcal infection that was so bad. My grandmother, my aunt's best friend, who was her lover, was a LPN who was taking care of it and sent me to my family doctor, Dr. DeSimone again, who then sent me to the VA for treatment.
Yeah.
Chris, that alone should have made me not want to do. not want to do things. Just crippled me.
Right.
But it didn't. It motivated me because I knew if it happened to me, it was happening to other people. So I became an advocate for myself and for others. I was in a movie called Justice Denied. It's a movie. I had just transitioned from a girl to a boy, but it's a movie and you can get it. I think it's available on Amazon, but I'm not sure. But it was a story about male military sexual trauma survivors.
Males?
Male. Meaning same-sex rape in many cases.
Yeah.
Now, today we have this guy sitting in the White House worried about transgender veterans, but doing absolutely nothing to end military sexual trauma.
I don't think he cares about it either way. I think that's just a distraction, you know?
It is a distraction. So, I got married, lost a baby, went on in my life, was successful somewhat, very successful in other things. I didn't have a great time from the time I was 19 till the time I was 35.
Yeah.
Okay. Suffered a lot. Okay. Was a Republican for most of my life till I transitioned to being a female when I was politely told I was no longer woke.
How old were you when that happened?
Chris, I don't even remember. Maybe late 30s.
Yeah. So you started, man, that's a
So
tough...
wait a minute. Let me back up just a little bit because it's something that I wanted to bring. So I ran for Bradley Beach City Council, and I ran with another gentleman who was running for mayor, Rich Simonson, who's since passed away. I had a campaign headquarters directly across the street from where I lived and where my office was for one of my businesses. Now, do you remember the story about the redheaded lady that worked at Bamberger's?
No.
That had made the chicken salad for the president?
Oh, yeah, I do.
Ella May Stevenson.
Ella May, yep.
So Ella May Stevenson was a friend of mine in adult life.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me, that's the 9/11. Guess what? She was my campaign manager when I ran for borough council.
No kidding.
Mm-hmm.
Is that where you got the name?
Mm-mm.
No?
So name is another story. One day I was sitting with my mom, and I'm a grown-up now. I said, Mom, if I was a girl, what would you have named me? And she said, well, we have two names, Wayne Edward, and Edward is named after Dr. Louis Edward Decima, or Wendy Ella, named after your great-great-aunt on your dad's side.
There. That's nice.
So later on, when I decided to do a name change and a gender change, I wanted to honor what my mother and father had chosen for a female name.
Yeah.
So I became Wendy Ella May.
Well, I like it. I really like it.
Now, remember that Ella May Stevenson was my campaign manager when I ran for town council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, I didn't win, but I did knock out the person that I was targeting. Okay, so
That's
I was
a win.
successful. That's a win for me. So later on, a couple years later, I decide that I'm going to have a name change, and I'm going to run for mayor in a town where I was bullied by a then police chief, who as a ninth, and when I was a seventh grader, was an eighth grader in grammar school. And from the time I was in sixth grade till the time he left, he bullied me every single day.
Yeah.
Or bullied me every day. Put my head in the toilet. Turned me upside down. I mean, the life that you might relate to is a guy on television named Sheldon Cooper.
Sheldon Cooper?
Yeah.
Yeah, Big Bang.
From the Big Bang.
Yeah.
Okay. Which is kind of a funny story too, but that's another story.
Yeah.
So anyway, I decide to transition, get a name change, and present as a female. But I'm intersexual, so I still know my sexuality. But now I'm going to change it from him to her. And then I'm going to decide later on to change my pronouns from her, she, to they, them, she.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, we kind of talked about that whole line of stuff last time. But hey, I got to get going. I have another engagement that I have to get to. Do you want to continue this? Do you want to do this again next weekend?
Absolutely.
I think we got a couple hours of content that I want to keep hearing the story. So
right now we're up to the time that, so let me just take a minute to finish this story.
Sure.
Because I think it's really relevant.
Absolutely.
Important. So now I'm running for mayor of the borough of Bradley Beach
in
New Jersey. And I show up for the Chamber of Commerce's mayoral debate as a girl.
Okay. Did they know you as a boy before that?
Oh, so now,
okay.
So now, our next time we talk, we'll start at that debate, and I'll tell you the whole story.
Okay.
So that you have it.
Yep.
From the perspective of my first outing as a female.
Okay.
Public outing.
We'll start there.
First public outing.
That'll be perfect. That'll be a good cliffhanger too. This will be a several part series, I'm sure.
Oh, it absolutely will.
Yeah.
And Chris, I want to say two things to you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much. It's been an honor and a privilege for a couple of years, almost 2 years now.
Yeah, we've been friends for a little while now, and I am grateful to know you. So thank you as well.
I'm also very grateful to have met you at Habitat when you were working there, and then when you came knocking on my door to sell me a roof.
No coincidences, right? That's kind of how my life is going.
No coincidences. That's God bringing you back in my life.
Right. And we connected on so many entrepreneurial stuff and writing.
Not just that, but I want to tell you that, as an artist, I love your music.
Thank you.
People should look you up on Apple.
I appreciate that.
And listen to your music, because there's a coincidence there too. No, there isn't coincidence. I will tell you all about that next time we talk.
Well, thank you so much, Wendy Ella May, and we'll continue the conversation next time. And I'm sure we'll be talking throughout the week. When we leave here, leave it open for a few minutes because it needs to finish uploading.
Okay.
And I can grab it. So yeah. Well, that was awesome. That was really good, Wendy. I'm excited for the next one now. Thank you for joining us in this captivating conversation with Wendy Ella May. We've explored her remarkable political journey, her formative experiences, and the profound impact of loss in her life. From her commitment to marginalized communities to her unique encounters with historical figures like Richard Nixon, Wendy's story is one of resilience, growth, and an unwavering dedication to public service. We've delved into her childhood experience, medical challenges, and the pivotal moments that shaped her identity and values. Wendy's journey through trauma, advocacy, and political aspiration serves as an inspiration to us all. If you found this conversation as enlightening and inspiring as we did, we kindly ask you to share it with your friends, family, and colleagues. Your support in spreading Wendy's story can make a significant impact. And if you've enjoyed our content, please consider leaving us a 5-star review. Your feedback not only helps us improve, but also enables us to continue bringing more engaging conversations like this one. Thank you for listening, and we look forward to bringing you more inspiring stories in the future. And thanks for listening to Almost Above Average. I'm Chris McIntyre, and we'll see you on the next one.